Thinking machines have taken control, offices deserted, manufacturing plants operating silently at full capacity, and transit routes flowing smoothly, free of drivers and congestion. Far from constituting a crisis, this scenario represents the culmination of an unprecedented technological revolution. The convergence of advanced artificial intelligence, comprehensive automation, and the materialization of limitless energy sources has propelled humanity toward a new paradigm, one in which direct human intervention is no longer an indispensable requirement for the continuous operation of societies and the economy's systems. For generations, sweat and effort dictated our worth, setting the pace of civilization. Each technological advance promised relief, a respite in the relentless race for survival, yet work always found new ways to claim our time. Until now. The perfect storm of generalized artificial intelligence, autonomous learning robots, and energy sources that defy the limits of possibility hasn't come to optimize employment, but to evaporate it. Behold, factories pulsing with life without a human soul inside, algorithms orchestrating entire cities, medical diagnoses of superhuman precision. The very fabric of our society now operates with astonishing autonomy, perhaps opening the doors to a human freedom never before dreamed. We have crossed the threshold into the post-labor era, a horizon of unimaginable abundance, yet one that hurls at us the most bewildering question. Freed from the yoke of employment, who are we, really? What strange path has led us to this reality, and what will we do with the freedom that technology, at last, seems to have granted us?
The path to this automated present was a vertiginous climb, driven by an artificial intelligence that ceased to be a mere tool and became the silent architect of our transformation. AI was not content with the repetitive tasks of old factories. Its intelligence colonized every corner of the economy, radically redefining how we produce, consume, and even how we dream. From systems that anticipate our desires by managing inventories with predictive precision, to algorithms that diagnose diseases with an acuity that shames the most expert of physicians, AI displayed an astonishing capacity to tackle cognitive complexity. Natural language processing, the resolution of scientific enigmas, the orchestration of global strategies, all surrendered to the relentless dominion of algorithms.
This exponential expansion, a technological tsunami, drastically reconfigured the labor landscape. Those projections we once whispered as chilling science fiction, think of the Goldman Sachs study that predicted the automation of 300 million jobs, materialized as the inescapable chronicle of a new era. AI not only swept away the dignity of manual labor, but assaulted and conquered offices, creative studios, the sanctuaries of science, pulverizing the arrogant belief that certain skills were an exclusively human bastion.
What catapulted this revolution above all previous ones was AI's astonishing ability to learn, to adapt, to evolve. These were not simple programmed automatons. They were digital entities that grew, daily surpassing the limitations of traditional automation and expanding, in a terrifying and wondrous way, the spectrum of jobs rendered obsolete. The old debate on technological unemployment, which resonated from the dawn of the Industrial Revolution and Keynes's optimistic predictions of shorter work weeks, exploded with existential urgency. The utopia of the 15-hour week vanished, replaced by a far more radical reality: the absolute irrelevance of human labor to the economic machinery. That vision of Keynes, let's just say, was either overly optimistic or it simply fell short before the maelstrom to come. A new silence gripped the world, that of millions of now idle hands, and with it, a deafening echo reverberated in humanity's soul. And now what? This new order threw us headlong into the fundamental question: how do we manage to channel this titanic force for the collective good? What decisions do we make to dodge the dystopia of massive inequality and navigate toward a society where automation, instead of a condemnation, translates into authentic and definitive human liberation? To continue exploring the depths of this transformation and other astounding futures that technology holds for us, subscribe to Vern's Project and join our community of explorers.
The dawn of the post-labor era was not the instant utopia some had dreamed of. It was a brutal awakening. The first impact was the vertigo of the void. Millions of people, entire generations educated in the ethics of effort and an identity forged in their profession, found themselves stripped of their role, their routine, their apparent purpose. The question, "What do you do for a living?" became a painful echo in a society where the traditional answer had lost all meaning. Suddenly, life's map, the one everyone thought they held, had been completely erased, leaving millions adrift in an ocean of free time and uncertainty. The specter of a useless class, as Harari warned, roamed the planet, fueling a profound existential crisis and a wave of social bewilderment. The promise of abundance clashed head-on with the loss of the vital structure that work, with all its burdens, had once provided.
The economy as we knew it teetered on the brink of collapse. Without mass wages, who would consume the goods and services tirelessly produced by machines? The early years were marked by palpable tension, a tug-of-war between the old order and the new reality. The terrifying specter of a technological neo-feudalism emerged, a minuscule elite, owners of the algorithms and robots, accumulating unimaginable wealth, while the vast majority depended on their uncertain benevolence. Would this be the legacy of grand automation, a freedom reserved for a few at the cost of the irrelevance of many? The title, "You'll Lose Your Job," resonated with implacable harshness, and the promise of, "but you'll win," seemed an unattainable mirage. But humanity, cornered, did not surrender to despair. From the ashes of the old economy and amidst the clamor of disoriented masses, the first answers began to emerge. The debate on universal basic income, UBI, once an academic discussion or an isolated social experiment, became the central proposal, an imperative necessity. The logic was overwhelming. If machines generated wealth, that wealth had to flow to everyone, guaranteeing a foundation of dignity and survival. Visionary figures, from tech entrepreneurs aware of the cataclysm they had helped unleash, to heterodox economists and social leaders, pushed for its implementation. It wasn't easy. There was fierce resistance, arguments about fiscal sustainability, fears of disincentivizing work, and widespread laziness. It seemed some feared a world without alarm clocks more than societal collapse itself. However, the alternative, social collapse, was infinitely more terrifying. Concurrently, a crucial battle was waged for the ownership and control of technology. Would the armies of robots and omniscient artificial intelligences belong to a few conglomerates, or would they be considered the heritage of humanity? New legislations were forged. Some nations opted for models of public or cooperative ownership of the most critical AI infrastructures, while others imposed massive taxes on automation profits to fund UBI and essential services. The idea of a universal technological dividend began to take shape, recognizing that every citizen deserved a share of the benefits generated by knowledge and development that was, ultimately, collective. Once the initial shock subsided and the first economic safety nets were deployed, society faced an even deeper challenge: cultural reinvention. The Protestant work ethic, so deeply ingrained in many civilizations, resisted fading away. What do I do with my life if I don't have to earn a living? Was the question that tormented many. Philosophers, artists, educators, and community leaders spearheaded a crusade to redefine purpose. A culture of lifelong learning was promoted, not for employment, but for the expansion of being. Universities transformed into centers for knowledge exploration, for the sheer pleasure of discovery, and countless platforms emerged for the development of creative, scientific, and social skills. Education itself had to be demolished and rebuilt from its foundations. The old model, designed to produce docile and specialized workers, no longer made sense. Critical thinking, emotional intelligence, collaboration, ethics, and adaptability were prioritized. Children and young people were taught not what to think for a job, but how to think for a full and meaningful life in a world of constant change. A person's utility was no longer measured by their economic productivity, but began to be valued by their contribution to community well-being, their creativity, their curiosity, or their capacity to care for others, for the planet, and even for the first human settlements beginning to flourish beyond our terrestrial frontier. But the story of how we reach the stars is a saga for another time. If you're excited by the idea of us exploring together how humanity conquered that final frontier, leave us a like. Your support fuels us to continue narrating these incredible adventures on Vern's project.
The result of this metamorphosis was surprising. Instead of succumbing to apathy, humanity experienced an explosion of creativity and personal reinvention. With basic needs met and time as an abundant resource, people began to explore long-deferred passions. The arts flourished in all their forms. Music composed by algorithms and humans in collaboration. Digital canvases coming alive with life. Interactive narratives that challenge the imagination. Citizen science became a global movement, with millions contributing their curiosity and time to research projects, from classifying galaxies to developing cures for rare diseases.
Communities were revitalized. Without the pressure of daily commutes or endless workdays, people rediscovered the value of local connection. Community projects of all kinds emerged, urban gardens feeding entire neighborhoods, shared repair and fabrication workshops, mutual care networks for children and the elderly. The concept of success was radically transformed. It was no longer measured by the accumulation of material wealth or ascent in a corporate hierarchy, but by the depth of relationships, the quality of contribution to the community, the positive impact on the environment, or the mastery achieved in a skill for sheer pleasure. Social status began to derive from wisdom, generosity, creativity, and the ability to inspire others.
Nevertheless, the summit reached did not signify the end of challenges. Total freedom, for some, remained an abyss. Existential anxiety persisted in certain sectors, and the risk of a society divided between hyperactive creators and those who plunged into passive, aimless leisure was a constant concern. Philosophers and contemporary thinkers ceaselessly warned about the thin line between liberation and absolute dependence on machines, about the need to cultivate inner discipline and willpower in a world that no longer externally demanded them. Furthermore, the global governance of AI and the equitable distribution of resources on a planetary scale remained heated debates, with tensions between regions advancing at different speeds toward this new utopia. Ethical vigilance and continuous adaptation became the new constants for a humanity that had won its freedom but now had to learn, day by day, to wield it with wisdom and responsibility.
And so, after the convulsions of the Great Transition, humanity settled into a new way of existence. The post-labor era was not a perfect utopia, free from individual dilemmas or challenges, but it undeniably represented an evolutionary leap. Daily life was transformed. Universal basic income, now an unquestionable pillar, ensured that material poverty was a relic of the past. Nutritious, personalized foods generated by automated vertical farming and biofabrication systems reached every home. Smart, sustainable housing, constructed and maintained by drones and robots, offered comfort and security. Healthcare, supercharged by AI diagnostics and advanced gene therapies, reached previously unimaginable levels of prevention and cure, significantly extending both the quality and duration of life.
Time, that once so scarce and tyrannical resource, became the true capital of every individual. And how was this new temporal wealth invested? In a myriad of pursuits. Knowledge was no longer a means to a vocational end, but an end in itself. Open learning centers, powered by AI tutors and vast shared knowledge networks, buzzed with activity. People of all ages immersed themselves in quantum physics, art history, musical composition, or ancient philosophy, simply for the pleasure of understanding and creating. Science was radically democratized, with global collaborative projects tackling everything from the mysteries of the universe to the regeneration of terrestrial ecosystems.
The arts exploded in a diversity never before seen. Without market pressures, creativity was unleashed in pure experimental forms. Technology not only freed up time for art, but became another tool, with AI collaborating with human artists to generate aesthetic experiences that challenged perception. Cities themselves became canvases, with interactive installations and cultural expressions emerging organically from communities.
Human relationships, freed from economic pressures and workplace hierarchies, found a new flourishing. Friendship, love, collaboration, and mutual care became the true engines of social interaction. Communities, no longer defined by proximity to a workplace, were woven around shared interests, passions, and collaborative projects. The global village became tangible through immersive virtual networks, yet direct human contact, face-to-face encounters, and collective celebrations were also intensely revalued. Loneliness and isolation, though still challenges for some, were actively combated with a multitude of social initiatives and gathering spaces designed to foster connection.
The concept of progress was also redefined. It was no longer about infinite economic growth, measured in abstract figures, but about integral human flourishing, the expansion of consciousness, the deepening of knowledge, the creation of beauty, the health of the planet, and social harmony. Humanity's grand projects were no longer dictated by the need to accumulate capital, but by insatiable curiosity and the desire to transcend. What new mysteries of the universe could we unveil? What levels of complexity and beauty could we achieve in our creations? How could we better understand our own consciousness and our place in the cosmos? These are the questions that now drove our civilization. What do you believe would be the great pursuits of such a liberated humanity? Leave us your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to read your ideas on purpose in a world without work.
And as humanity turned to answer these new existential questions, technology continued to open doors to the unimaginable. One of those doors, perhaps the most audacious, led us beyond the confines of our own bodies. If the idea of transcending the physical body, transferring our mind, intrigues you as much as it does us, and you want to know how science is laying the groundwork for this astonishing feat, we invite you to discover it in the video we're featuring on screen. Don't miss it. I'm Vern's Project, and I'll see you on the next frontier of human knowledge.